watched Parks and Rec many a time, and in these rewatches, something always bothers me. I hate Anne. When I say I hate Anne, I don't mean that she makes me angry or that she annoys me. She just disappoints me, fundamentally. When I was coming up with this list, I couldn't even really make bullet points because it was just the same thing over and over again. And that thing was, she isn't a person. It's frustrating because Rashida Jones is lovely and Anne had a lot of potential, and it was just like, whatever. Ann Perkins sucks. And here's why. A lot of people coming to Anne's defense say she's just a typical straight man character that's more grounded in reality, so the characters surrounding her that are so crazy make her seem kind of lackluster in comparison. It's more than that, because a successful straight man character, as they are known, has to have a personality, desires, any sort of adjectives, all of which she lacks. So a good example of this is Bob from Bob's Burgers. He's the straight man in the family by comparison, but he's still weird. He has passion for what he does, but he's not just his job. He also enjoys Western movies and in general just has a discernible personality. Anne is not a person. She is a nurse. And you may be thinking, no, she's just passionate about what she does. She's very caring. Let me stop you right there. What are her passions outside of nursing? What are her hobbies? Interests? Have you come up with anything yet? Because I looked, and I have not. She goes to her job, she does her job, and she comes home. She worked at the parks department for a little bit, but she was still working in the medical field, and ultimately it didn't lead to anything. It didn't cause her to have any sort of realization. It was just a plot point. So now let's discuss some adjectives, perhaps. For the other characters in Parks and Rec, I can describe them. You know, the way you should be able to do with a character. Leslie's upbeat, type A, she's very competitive, she loves breakfast food. Ben is nervous, practical, sensitive. He enjoys board games. Anne is nice and nurse. I'm not saying a character can't be kind. On the show, Andy is a great example of that. He's very nice. However, he also has other qualities and interests. Do you see what I'm saying? If all you can say about a character is they're nice and normal, that's not a well-developed character. It's just not. Still having trouble coming to terms with the fact that Anne is a bad character? Let's discuss her dating history, shall we? So on the show, Anne dates a bunch of different people who have a variety of personalities, and that's great. But the problem is that when she dates someone, she completely absorbs their personality. And she knows it, and she exemplifies it at a garage sale. She has a box of all of her old stuff she had when she was with a certain person, and it completely reflects that person rather than herself. She realizes that she's been lost and she doesn't really know who she is. That, I think, is a very relatable thing for a lot of people, and I totally am on board with that idea. Like, yeah, let's address the elephant in the room. Anne doesn't have a personality. So she decides to take a step back and get to know herself better. Amazing. Except nothing comes from it. She, dyes a strip of her hair red and kisses a random guy, and that's it. While I do support hair dye and kissing strangers, there needs to be more. Except there is one thing that happens, actually. Much like many people desperate to fix a problem or fill a hole in their lives, Anne decides she wants to have a baby. Having a baby instead of doing the internal work to fix problems, that always works out great, I hear. And yeah, this is also just a plot point to get her and Chris back together, but it's weird to me that this female character is trying to solve her personal problems by having a baby. It's just odd. Ann Perkins Go to Therapy Challenge. I know you have healthcare. With all of this in mind, it's pretty safe to say that Anne is incapable of being alone. Leslie is often painted as the codependent one in her and Anne's friendship, and that is accurate. Anne isn't really able to stand on her own either. And I think where she ends up in the show is proof of that. It's like she just gave up and was like, well, I guess I'll have a baby with the beautiful, anxious man that loves me. Which, yeah, I can't really fault her for. I mean, it's Chris. As you can guess, my main issue is just that she's underdeveloped. I don't think Ann is a bad person, but that's mainly because I don't have anything to work off of. Parks and Rec is a really fun show and it has a lot of great characters, but when you have so many characters, there's usually one or two that falls through the cracks, and Ann is that person. It just doesn't stand out in comparison. And you don't have to be loud to accomplish this. Ron, for example, is very quiet and reserved. He still has his quirks and a complete backstory. Loves woodworking, he hates everyone, and his ex-wives and his mother share the same name. I mean, what more can you ask for? Ann, on the other hand, doesn't stand out because she's just there. There's nothing else to say. Now, my revisions. I've been thinking a lot about what I would do differently if I had the opportunity to write this character, and I think they were going in the right direction at first. I would still have Ann go through this sort of trial and error dating period where she realized she wasn't really being her own person. However, there has to be some kind of change. And I'm telling ya, I'm sending that woman right to therapy. But Parks is a fun show. Therapy is too serious. Let me remind you that Chris constantly talks about his therapist, Dr. Richard Nygaard. So clearly it's something the writers were comfortable bringing up. I'm not saying Ann needs to go into therapy and have these sob sessions or anything, or that it needs to be something that's talked about constantly. I just think it would have added a couple of plot points that I think could have been really fun. Here's how I see it playing out. Ann and Chris are having a conversation after Ann has had a particularly bad night. Chris references his therapist, Dr. Richard Nygaard, which gets Ann thinking about therapy, and she ends up asking him for his information. They exchange it, and they have this cute little vulnerable moment. We then have the potential arc of them bonding over their shared therapist, and then when Ann is her own person, they can get back together. Also, when Ann goes to her first therapy session, we finally get to meet Dr. Richard Nygaard, which is something that I have wanted for a long time. Can you imagine if she walked into the office and it was just Sir Ian McKellen or something? It would be so funny. I know he would do it. He's done Cats. He is not above it. Most importantly, it would have been very helpful for Ann's growth and development as a character. TV executives, hi, I'm a comedy writer. Hire me. Ann's lack of a character on the show just upsets me. Her greatest contribution is all the compliments that Leslie is inspired to make up. And she didn't have to be this way. She could have been so much more. Unfortunately, Ann Perkins sucks. End of rant. If there are any other characters that you can't stand, please leave them in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more. Bye guys.